The original name of the ACA was the PPI ACA, Patient Protections Affordable Care Act. It never delivered on the Affordable Care Act part. It did provide patient protections. Better insurance. You can't have, there's no lifetime caps, there's no rescission, there's no pre-existing conditions, but it never delivered on the less expensive side. Do we have that?
We should do that Murphy thing next.
That Murphy
I think.
Thing?
This is what's great to hear. I mean, Tim Walz, he went on Molly Jong Fast's show a few weeks after, or a few weeks from now, or from today, or a few weeks
ago.
Jesus Christ. Yes, a few weeks ago. And he had said that people are going to be anticipating universal health care next election cycle, which is encouraging. And then to have that recognition in this context as well, it's just really important. This is also case study, QB clipped this, but I'd recommend everybody watch the whole Chris Murphy interview. Again, he's not my pick for president. I think he's more of a Senate creature. I wish he'd be more interested in replacing Schumer, but it seems like he wants to run for president. Either way, this was really around, a similar topic about the ACA, and he says the same thing, that it's not sufficient.
I see a Democratic Party that is way too comfortable with corporate lobbyists. A Democratic Party that, God bless that we can negotiate the price of 10 drugs. Yeah. And that's a huge victory. If that doesn't send the message that this party is utterly out of touch with, it's not a party that understands, it seems, the power and leverage that government can have to fight corruption. It seems altogether too comfortable being a part of the corruption.
So listen, it all started during the Wall Street crisis of 2008. The Democratic Party is supposed to be the party that breaks up the banks, not the party that bails out the banks, right? And it was that day the Democratic Party started to lose credibility.
Before that, isn't it maybe it's Jimmy Carter opening up trade, it's Clinton deregulating?
There's two things that's really interesting about this part of the exchange right there. One is, again, this is criticism of Obama, and a growing recognition in the party that Obama never delivered on, and maybe some of it was projected upon him, but never delivered on the promise of providing change, which was a pretty amorphous thing. But Obama had the opportunity, and this is well documented. Barney Frank told this story originally until he became a bank lobbyist, I think it was. That he had gone to Henry Paulson, who was was he chairman of the Fed, Paulson, or was he the Treasury Secretary? I think it was the Fed. And it's Secretary of Treasury. And the plan was, you have two options. This is in the fall of 2008 after Obama wins. And there's a financial crisis. And the banks are over leveraged. And you could do what FDR did, which was bail out the homeowners who own these homes, give them the money so that they could pay the banks and pay down on their principal, what they bought the house at a very inflated price, bring down the payments of their interest payments so they could continue to pay. Or you could pay the banks and then ask the banks, will you provide mortgage relief? And Paulson said that Bush was willing to do the former, but they need sign off from Obama. And when Barney Frank went to Obama and said, Paulson says they're ready to do this, Obama said, nah, we got one president at a time. Mm-hmm. And so this little dance prevented, or at least became the justification for why there was no money given directly to homeowners. And when Obama gets in, he lets Tim Geithner, who was handpicked by a guy named Froman, who was a Citibank executive, essentially a Robert Rubin proxy. And what did they do? They paid off the banks and said, please provide mortgage relief for people. And what the banks did is, not really.
It's bonus season.
It's bonus season, and we make a lot of fees when people go on their way to foreclosure. And you had about 3 million, almost 3.5 million foreclosures in this country. Obama effed it up.
Yep. That's 2, by the way, financial crises in a row that I would say the COVID pandemic and the PPP loans, where wealthier people concentrated more wealth on the other end of it.
At the very least, at least we saw in the wake of COVID, the Democratic Party provide direct relief to people in the form of inefficient pay for COBRA, child tax credit, extended unemployment, whatnot. But and here is Murphy finally acknowledging this fact.
Yep. And he also acknowledges the the child tax credit piece as well, which is that it's good, but as he'll explain in a second, it's just patchwork covering up the massive concentration of wealth at the top in our economy that isn't going towards people via broad-based social programs.
And the other funny part about this exchange with Jon Stewart is I specifically remember Jon Stewart saying we shouldn't be so harsh on the banks. I think his brother was an investor. But, it's nice to see people evolve as they age.
Bails out the banks, right? And it was that day that the Democratic Party started to lose credibility.
Before that, isn't it maybe it's Jimmy Carter opening up trade, it's Clinton deregulating the financial institutions? This is a long history of, even when you think about Medicare or the...
Keep going, I'm sorry.
ACA. Oftentimes, those are just subsidies. Corporations love the ACA. They're making a shit ton of money, billions of dollars.
So this party has become addicted recently to sort of writing people checks in order to compensate for the way in which the economy is rigged. I'm not saying that the child tax credit
now we're getting somewhere,
right,
baby.
Right.
Come on! Now you're talking, Murphy!
Right?
Let's go!
So I'm not saying, that the child tax credit isn't a good thing, or a little bit more money for your Obamacare subsidy isn't a good thing.
Right.
But that doesn't make people feel good that you're having to give them a little bit of money to compensate for the fact that work doesn't pay in this country.
There you go.
Drug company CEOs are making out like bandits buying their 7th house. Right?
Hallelujah!
Right?
Hallelujah!
So if you were really serious about communicating a message that resonates with people, you wouldn't be talking about just negotiating in a different way for 10 drugs. You would be talking about putting a cap on the amount of money that any drug company can sell drugs to any American.
Is that so hard? That's the point. The point is simply this. The government subsidizes these corporations with billions of dollars and demands nothing in return. And isn't that the foundation of a governing philosophy? Maybe they could put it in a book. They could call it Project something. Like, is that work?
I mean, what's annoying here, though, is you notice what Murphy doesn't do. He shifts the conversation
Call for Medicare-For-All
from the ACA to drug prices. But again, not willing to go and say we need Medicare for all. I mean, it's just...
Well, that's why Walls should be in the way too early 2028 frontrunner thing. Walls, not Murphy. But that's what I'm saying. Murphy is the kind of guy that would be more open to left-wing arguments in the Senate if he were Senate Majority Leader, as opposed to being someone who leads on policy. I don't think he's the strongest presidential candidate. But I do think, it's encouraging regardless to see these arguments being made in the mainstream. And then you see the polling about how Democrats feel about their leadership. They took resisting Trump seriously, and they're open to arguments right now that show why what they did incorrectly. And frankly, the arguments that are being fed by the consultant class aren't resonating. I saw a poll of Gavin Newsom after he's been doing these interviews with right wingers and playing footsie with them, that he's dropped in 10 points in favorability with Democrats right now. Good.
Support that.
I support that, but that's
wholeheartedly.
Why. I don't.
It should be 20.
I think Chris Murphy's more weaselly. This is why he's better for the Senate and not as a leader of the party. But he at the very least is acknowledging that this is a reality and isn't doing what there are fewer Democrats doing the Newsom thing, and that's an improvement.
Yep.
So
the We haven't really talked about the Gavin Newsom thing, but let me just say, like,
We did on Thursday. I think we were out.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, let me just, I'll do a very short version of this. F that guy. Honestly, like, the idea is not that, the idea is that Democratic politicians should go into their spaces, not invite, platform these fascists in your spaces.
And if you're going to do
I have
it,
no problem with you sitting.
Yeah.
With you sitting on stage at CPAC and getting disinvited the next time. But when you're ingratiating yourself by welcoming these people, whose audience are you exposing them to? I mean, it is blinkered. It is gross. The guy's always been a pretender.
yeah, slimy. You're telling me Gavin Newsom, that guy who looks like a used car salesman, is slimy, who was married to Kimberly Gargoyle?
I gotta change.
Sorry, Guilfoyle. Sorry, Don Jr.'s ex.
I gotta change my.
But he was saying his son loves. Oh, your soundboard's not working. I'm
Yes.
sorry. He was saying his son loves Charlie Kirk. Don't you know? That's what Gavin was telling Charlie. Can you imagine
Honestly-
if Saul was into Charlie Kirk?
Honestly, I would be embarrassed as
say
a
that
parent
publicly?
to say it publicly.
It's child abuse to say it publicly.
Yeah. Well. I feel like your kid should have better values than that. I mean, if you're a Democrat.
Yeah, listen,
like
I am completely open to the idea that you can't control what your kids do in that respect. Who knows which way it's going to go. But I wouldn't brag about it.
definitely.
Calling from an 859 area code. My kid was excited that we had Zoran Mamdani on. So,
Take that, Gavin.
hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.